Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the December 7th Town Board Work Session. Can I get a motion to open the work session?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Jill, you want to,
Well,
or Ed, actually. with the-
if anyone's paying attention, we did a little bit of seat rearranging this evening, earlier this evening.
Wait, what?
Mr. Katz
What
was sworn in as our town supervisor, so
Congrats,
congratulations,
Lisa.
Lisa.
Thank you.
Congrats.
And Jeremy, who has been such a sport and has been holding down the fort for months and months on end. Glad to see you still up there, and thank you so much for everything.
Thank you.
I have a little nice thing I'm going to say at the beginning of the town board meeting, but we're waiting.
Anyway, first thing to start with, mask mandate. So this was posed last week by the town board, asking the public for their input. I haven't been keeping exact count of the letters coming in, but it seems like it's a...
I'd say more in
It feels
support
like an
of.
even split.
Yeah.
Oh, you
you can
really? I
split
thought it was
from
more a
last
little
week.
in support of, but.
I don't
We
know.
got several this evening.
Yes, I know that.
So Ed, do you want to talk to us about what kind of the requirements are with the new law, just to remind everybody, and what our options may be?
Right, so earlier this year, the town board amended the mask law that had been adopted in 2020. The thrust of the change that was made this year was to give the town supervisor some more options and flexibility with respect to how a mask mandate would be applied. So whereas in 2020, we had sort of an all or nothing approach at that time, the new law allows the town supervisor, with advice and consent of the input of the town board, to tailor a mask requirement. So one aspect of the local law allows a mask mandate on public property. Another focuses on, talks about places of public accommodation, so restaurants, retail, places like that. And so if the town supervisor determines that we've reached a point where this is necessary, town supervisor can declare an emergency and activate those portions, the portion or portions of the local law that she deems appropriate.
And that wasn't in part of a county or statewide state of emergency. It's completely
No,
separate.
that's just purely a local designation.
So, okay, so then I'll open it up to town board members to discuss.
So, a couple of thoughts. As I said in last week's town board meeting, my feeling on this has not changed since the summertime when we discussed this revised mask law, that we are in a time of great uncertainty. And we have the opportunity to create a safer environment for the people who live and work in Newcastle. These emergent strains create unknown risk. There's a splash today because there's a first case of Omicron in Westchester County. I would argue that it is most definitely not the first case of Omicron in Westchester County. It's just the first identified case of Omicron in Westchester County. We still, Westchester does quite well in terms of vaccination rates. There is stratification by age, for sure, but only about 30% of children under the age of 12 are currently vaccinated in Westchester, and that is having received a first injection. We are in a range of 80s, in the 80 percentile countywide for folks up to about age 50, and then it jumps to like 90, and then for our seniors, they're more in the 96% range for the county. A couple of things to keep in mind there. Vaccination has been demonstrated, immunity due to vaccination has been demonstrated to wane over time. And we also don't know how much time we have. But it is clear that it's waning over time, hence the approval of boosters. We also know that there is great variability between individuals in the immunity that vaccination offers them. and you don't know whether you have good, healthy vaccination or a less healthy vaccination. We also know that vaccinated people are getting sick with COVID and getting knocked on their backs with COVID. There is much less hospitalization among vaccinated people. That's a significant point. We're seeing that in our even regional hospitalizations due to COVID. They're down to where we were this time last year. But in Newcastle, we are exactly where we were this time last year in terms of case numbers. With, let's say, healthily 10% or more of the total population unvaccinated people remain incubators for the continued mutagenesis of the virus. That creates risk for all of us, in addition to them personally. So, so what do we do with all that, right? We obviously encourage everyone to get vaccinated. We encourage everyone to get boosted. And I think we can go a further step to protect the community by suggesting and requiring that in our public spaces, people take this minimal measure to protect one another. There was a comment that came in to the town board saying you should trust us to take care of one another. And I think history has shown us over the last 2 years that doesn't quite work. So we have an opportunity to have very visible protection that we can have in place to protect the community.
Okay. So it's interesting, yikes, with regard to trusting us that,
Your
is
mic
right?
is not, your mic, try it on and off.
So, is
Try
it better?
Try.
Is that better? Okay. So, George County Executive Latimer yesterday declared, or said he was going to declare a state of emergency in Westchester, and in light of COVID numbers right now. And I actually expected when I first heard him speak that he was going to declare a mask mandate, and he actually specifically said no. And he said what we want to do is encourage everyone to get vaccinated. We want to encourage everyone to get boosted. But that we're going to right now let people decide for themselves and see, he said it's really the onus is upon each person to decide what you can do to stop the spread, and that the largest issue is making sure to get vaccinated. And he did not go as far as imposing a mask mandate. So while, I agree it's obviously still out there, we were on a call, Lori and I were both on a call with Northern Westchester Hospital yesterday. Right now they have 6 cases in the hospital. The, mortality rate in Westchester, according to George Latimer, is down to 1 per week as opposed to 14 per week, which was, at this time last year. So I'm sort of leaning toward potentially not doing anything yet until we get more guidance from the state and the county. I feel like if the county is not requiring it, I'm not convinced that we should be the only town that is requiring that. So that's a thought to kind of talk about.
So my position is, I tend to agree with Lori. And I don't defer to Lori, but certainly I respect and appreciate what she says based on her experience. As I mentioned last week also, not to put my wife in the spot, but she's also of that similar position and has been advocating for the mask mandate for weeks now. Jill and I had a conversation a couple weeks ago about bringing back full capacity into this room, and we had a conversation, and even though masks would be required, I was concerned that you're going to have potentially too many people and too many opportunities for this to spread. And as Lori noted too, I think our numbers were 61 today, 64 or so active cases yesterday. It's trending upward pretty rapidly. Granted, it's not the same degree in terms of fatalities and hospitalizations, but it's pretty significant. And I just have a friend of mine who's my age, a little younger than me, double vaccinated, and used a term that I felt touch and go. He was really, really sick. I wouldn't expect, and pardon me, did George Latimer ever have a mask mandate for the county? He didn't, did he?
No.
No.
There is one in place in government buildings.
Right, right. So, nobody wants to make that decision because it's a hard one, and it's gonna be unpopular one way or another. And the other concern you have is for some local businesses, they're not going to want to see it. But at the same time, I think that a lot of people feel more comfortable knowing that they throw on a mask and they can go into that business, they don't have to worry about it. And I wore one in a gym for some time. Granted, it's not fun or comfortable.
Don't forget, the state had a mask mandate.
Right.
So that kind of superseded anything the county was going to do.
So I ultimately think it's a hard decision in terms of from a public perspective, but I believe it's the right decision because it's this variant today. I don't know what I'm not smart enough to say what the variant is going to be tomorrow. And I believe that other communities around here often follow our lead, not to sound arrogant, but I think we are oftentimes in the front of many issues. And as winter gets upon us and people are inside more than out, as opposed to being out and about, where it's less likely to spread, I think that it's a smart thing to do, and I do support it. We can craft it, but I do support it. You're up.
Ed, can I ask, sorry, Ed, can you just go through what, I just wanted to double check that I understood the law correctly as far as the phases or the levels in which it's enacted. So there's the public space, which is basically town-owned lands and
Right.
property.
Right.
And then what's after that again?
Places of public accommodation, so your retail,
Okay,
businesses, professional offices, service establishments, gyms, private clubs, religious establishments.
Okay.
Those are all listed in the local law.
okay,
And then public transportation, and then finally outdoor spaces.
okay. Outdoor spaces, like all town of Newcastle outdoor spaces or town of Newcastle?
When outside and present in or on any public property or public space, including but not limited to any park, recreational field, sidewalk, street parking, this is 2020 essentially.
Okay, got it. And then, but the first level with town-owned property, does that include outdoor as well, or no?
Indoors.
Indoors, okay, sorry. Thank you. So I've actually been getting a lot of feedback from a lot of parents. I'm very fortunate because I have 2 young children who are very active in the community and play sports, whether it be lacrosse, football, or an art class. In any event, a lot of the time, I will say, they were very hesitant to email the town board because I think it can be a very intimidating subject to broach upon. Or even, another example was I even brought it up on this like 3rd grade text string to ask for people's opinions, and people text messaged me individually because they just didn't want to ruffle any feathers. So I first want to start off by saying that nobody is flawless, and I think that it's important to acknowledge that this whole experience, that compassion and understanding and seeing both sides, I think is really critical because we're all going through the same motions, and I think first and foremost, we're a community that wants the best for everyone. So with that said, I'm in, my perspective of this is that, whereas it was a few months ago where the kids weren't getting vaccinated, where the vaccination rates were not super high, or even the hospitalization at that point was actually still low, and actually hospitalization rate for Westchester County hasn't been alarming. I do think that taking a wait and see approach is much more preferable to me. I also just think that, candidly, we just had wine around town last Friday, and I was even guilty of not wearing a mask indoors because I was having a glass of wine, and yes, a town board member does drink. And in any event, I think that my point is that my fear about instituting a mask law now, especially in private businesses, would really hurt the holiday shopping whatchamacallit, holiday shopping period. And I think that adding another layer of, for lack of a better word, fear of going out and by the way, like, whenever I am in a store, whenever I'm at Whole Foods, I see 90% of the people wearing masks, truthfully. So I think that taking it day by day and looking at the hospitalization rate and looking at, the vaccination rate and looking at, obviously, the infection rate, I think that would be really meaningful for me.
And to your point, Lauren, that doesn't mean if we don't put one in place right now, that's not saying don't wear a mask.
Right.
If you are uncomfortable, you should 100% be wearing a mask.
Right, yes.
And I would encourage people to do that, but I'm sort of with you that let's wait and see before it's something that we mandate.
And I have to say, just on another note, and I'm not sure how this has been affecting New York City, but I would feel much safer if folks presented their vaccination cards at restaurants or something of that sort. I'm not even sure if County Executive Latimer would, even consider that type of legislation for the county, because, I will say that there are certain restaurants in Westchester County that do require vaccination cards and et cetera, et cetera. I do encourage our merchants and, whatever it is, the gyms, whoever who wants to sort of like add that extra layer of protection to say, hey, we're requiring vaccination cards, we're keeping everything in, in records, just a thought. Because again, like we're all here together and we're all trying to enjoy our lives and sort of keep going, basically.
My question really to both of you would be, at what point, what's that threshold? So if it's not today, what is it? Is it a certain percentage? Is it a certain number?
Yeah.
Because it seems arbitrary, and I say that only because I don't know what the threshold is. I'm not smart enough to know the science and the medicine to make that determination. But if we're reaching what we were during the peak, is that our threshold, or do we say, well, hospitalizations are not what they are, so therefore it's not as bad in terms of its potential? So if we're going to say there's going to be a threshold, what does that mean? That needs to be identified sooner rather than later if we're not prepared to do it now.
Mm-hmm. And I think, I've been speaking with a lot of medical professionals about this, and notwithstanding your wife, they're not as
What'd you say? She's
concerned.
listening.
They're not as concerned as they used to be, because they said that while the new variant may be more easily contagious, can be spread easier, it's not quite as virulent as the old ones, and that they tend to lessen in intensity, and they were not as concerned.
That's not demonstrated. That's not demonstrated. The data
Okay,
does
well,
not support that.
That's what the medical professionals are telling me. So that's what they're seeing, and that's what they just told me at the hospital yesterday as well, that's what they're seeing.
Does not exist. That's the
Because
opinion
we
of
would have
someone who saw
more,
some
we would have
patients.
more hospitalizations, it is supporting it, actually. We would have more hospitalizations, we would have people getting much sicker.
I'm going to take a minute. That does not mean that the current strains are less virulent. That means that vaccination has a positive impact on hospitalization.
Well, I think that's true, too.
The data on the strains, particularly the newest strain, is not clear around its severity, its likelihood for hospitalization. There are still additional strains that we don't know about that haven't been characterized yet, so I wanted to correct that misstatement. I work every day with people who study the worldwide COVID strains, threat, and the development of therapeutics to address them, and they are exceptionally concerned.
So perhaps we can also bring in some immunologists to come in and speak to the board, and see what they say might be something good to bring in. either if there's an immunologist at Regeneron or there are other ones, from the hospital to come in and speak to us. That might be interesting to hear as well.
Yeah, to Jeremy's point about metrics, some of the reporting yesterday indicated that the county was looking at 4 metrics.
Okay.
Infection rate being over 3%, hospitalization, deaths per week, and active cases. So at 3,000 or more active cases in the county, that would be a trigger for, in terms of.
Trigger for,
county-
trigger for what, for mask mandate?
For masking.
For a more aggressive.
There were
intervention.
4, right? I
Right,
took a
so
picture.
infection rate was 1, hospitalization of 100 or more in the county with COVID was 2, 10 or more deaths per week, or 3,000 active cases in the county.
Or and,
Or all 4 of those.
or ors.
Those were 4 things, I don't know how they're balancing, but they're looking at all of those
Gotcha.
4 areas.
I'm sorry, what was the last one, Ed?
Active case, more than 3,000 active cases in the county.
So, I don't know if my math is right here, so if we utilize these metrics and applied it to Newcastle numbers and use the percentages, that would give us a pretty clear picture as well?
Well, it's just an information point.
Okay.
And again, I'm going on the reporting yesterday.
There's 3,400 active cases in Westchester right now.
And, I think more than anything, we need to encourage our residents to continue to get vaccinated if they've already been vaccinated and they qualify to get their boosters. To that effect, there is a vaccination clinic for children on Monday at the Millwood Fire Station. I think it's from 3 to 6:30. And then adults can get their boosters there as well at the Millwood Firehouse on, I believe it's Monday.
It's on Route 100, it's on the 13th? 13th.
Yeah, I printed it out, hang on.
So, they can
Yeah,
get
on the
their-
13th. Second dose, you can do 5 to 11 years old, boosters for adults from 3 to 6:30.
Right, also, kids can get their first shot as well, and their second shot would be through OVAC, Wednesdays or Fridays.
And I think if we can continue, the Northwell will come and do clinics for us as well if we want to continue, offering clinics so that everyone knows they can come to one place and get their vaccinations done. I think we should look at finding another time to do that as well.
So I don't know if you're closing it out, I'll just say that we really have to identify our own metrics, and if it's similar to the counties, if that's our plan, if that's what, there needs to identify something, it has to be, scaled down to what we have here. Because if we're just going to be reactionary, we're gonna find ourselves in a bad place. So, and in light of the fact that the legislation allows us to limit, it's not all or nothing, we can also piecemeal it. So, I would encourage, when I say us, and ultimately now it's your choice, but I would encourage you to really consider it, because we'll see the numbers on Friday, they're going up and up and up, so. All right.
So I think, I'm definitely open to keeping this dialogue open, see what happens, and then maybe we do parse it and not maybe require it for retail stores right now, but we do require it on public property. We can certainly, I'll be considering that.
Are there any indoor public properties that currently don't require mask wearing?
I don't think so.
All of town properties do.
Yeah, we already did.
All school properties do, library does.
Okay, so you're already at level 1. You only have one,
Wrong, yeah, we are.
Yes, level
you
2.
only have public accommodation spaces left.
Right.
Well, you have outdoor.
An outdoor.
You have outdoor, but I'm saying you're at level 1 already. And I think the question is, at what point is it appropriate to move to level 2?
You do have a hand up if you're interested in taking comments now.
Oh, perfect, yes. So are there any public comments?
Sure, hold Hi, good evening.
Hi, Rob.
So my question was kind of similar to what Lori had asked, I think the new law has kind of A, B, C, and D, or 1, 2, 3, and 4 is kind of the different subsections of what can be imposed, is that correct?
Yes.
And so, in terms of A, I think it's A, was the question just answered that we're already at A?
Yeah,
Yes,
Is there any part of A that we're not at?
I don't think so.
no,
And there's one for public transportation. Is there any part, I think it's C. Is there any part of C that we're not at?
Well, the county already requires masks on the Beeline bus system, and it's required on the Metro North as well.
do we require masks on our electric bus?
Shuttle, I don't know.
So,
The shuttle, that I don't know.
Well, I guess
So
we
is it-
should, I mean,
We should.
Well, we don't, at this point, we're not, I'm not aware of us requiring it, certainly not pursuant to the local law. It would maybe a de facto practice.
Does anybody take the shuttle?
And actually, you know what? I don't know that we're fully at A. Does the senior center doesn't require masks?
Yes, we do.
We do?
We
Because
require
I've
masks.
been there and
Yeah,
if
I've seen
everyone's
people tell
fully
me.
vaccinated, you don't need to wear a
So
mask.
that you're correct. You're correct.
I've
We-
seen-
We recommend masks,
Right,
but especially with seniors when they're doing like even armchair exercises and things like that. If they're fully vaccinated, they don't necessarily wear masks. Yes,
Right.
You are correct.
like, because I don't know if it changed, but my remembrance of the old law was it had kind of a distinction between only applying to those who were unvaccinated, or am I mistaken in my memory?
I think you were wrong. I believe it was unvaccinated or within close proximity and then all the time inside. You couldn't
And
socially
there's-
distance. You
Right.
couldn't socially
And
distance.
did it? I don't think it even contemplated the because it went into effect before there
vaccine,
were
yeah.
vaccines.
Was
You
just
had to
social-
wear it.
It was
So-
social
Maybe
distance.
that-
and
I think it was social
you gotta
distance,
mask.
yeah.
Did the new law kind of maintain that kind of distinction?
No, the new law is these 4 categories.
The new law just basically gave the town more options as to how to impose a mask mandate.
But the mandate doesn't distinguish between vaccinated and unvaccinated, does it?
No.
No.
So what I think I'm hearing is that we're kind of at A and C to begin with.
Somewhat.
for
Well,
most-
sort of, we're not at A, I guess, fully.
We're like 99%
Right.
A.
So let me just to move it forward, what are you advocating for, if anything?
Well, I'm just trying to understand, because the B that you have there is pretty comprehensive. And, and I think what I noticed in B, and I apologize for not paying more attention to the final law when it came out, but I looked at it the other day, is that I think the B also took out the residential enforcement. Is that correct?
Right. B
Yeah.
is places of public accommodation, so public spaces, private property that's a public space, open to the public.
Like restaurants, gyms, things like that, but not your own private property.
Look, I listened to George's speech the other day, and, he was very much kind of like, putting out the carrot, but kind of carrying a big stick. And he was really focusing, he didn't really go into details on what's gonna happen when those thresholds get breached. And we don't really have any details, as far as I know, that kind of pertain to Newcastle. They're reporting, he gets county-wide stuff, which I hope is good information, but the kind of information we get for Newcastle is very little. I think the best we can really get is just looking at kind of the case numbers in Newcastle and the surrounding kind of areas. But we don't get hospitalizations. I don't know if you guys get any of that information, but I'm assuming you don't.
What you're saying for Newcastle residents?
Yes.
The proportion is going to be the same. Whether they live in Newcastle, they live in Austining, the proportion, their relative risk for hospitalization will be the same.
But in terms of hospitalization rates, you can't guarantee, I mean, Northern Westchester gave us their numbers, but like they said too, there are people who work in the city who may end up going to hospital in New York City, so we can't just
Right,
use Northern Westchester as a hospital.
Right, my sense is the only metrics that we have that are even remotely reliable are the county metrics and the town metrics on cases, which is that the only one you get out of the four metrics that he has. So it's difficult to actually know what's going on in the town, but I take some comfort in the fact that we're at A and C, and I would really, look, I was at Wine Around Town too, and the adherence to B was basically non-existent, but there was food and wine being passed around all over the place, and it really wasn't really viable to follow B. But I would like to see businesses be strongly encouraged. I don't know how you do that more than trying to use the bully pulpit to tighten things up during this period of time. I'd like to see some of our larger businesses, which include 2 supermarkets, I think are the 2 largest that I can think of off the top of my head, and some of the, I guess the Walgreens and places like that, to try and ask them to, encourage them to have these kind of standards, and see if it's possible to encourage people before you mandate people, because people do, and we've seen it both regardless of how progressive a town we think we are or any town is, people push back. And
Yeah.
sometimes it seems to do more harm than good, which, is disappointing. Look, I'm disappointed that we don't have more of a vaccination rate, and that we have some people who only have a single vaccination versus the full vaccination.
Right.
And I think, and George specifically mentioned the other day that the county is looking at that as kind of unvaccinated at this point.
Yep, and I think that's what we're sort of, or at least I'm advocating, I'm sure the whole board is too, that everyone who isn't vaccinated should be getting vaccinated to the extent that they can. And certainly, we will, even if we don't mandate it at this point, we certainly are encouraging everyone to, wear their masks when they're in public spaces, including private establishments. And I'm seeing that more. When I used to be a few months ago, you go into Whole Foods, no one was wearing a mask. Now I'm seeing pretty much everyone wearing masks. Same thing in the stores around town. I'm seeing people in masks more than they used to be.
It'd be nice if some of the stores, though, I don't know how many stores require it, but it'd be nice if more of them did have it publicly posted that they did require it, and that the national chains also, or the larger regional chains required it as well, because those are the biggest areas of kind of public congregation.
Yep. All right.
Rob, interesting in talking to some store employees, they wished the town would mandate it so that they didn't have to fight with customers.
No, their store could, I guess they're looking for the town to do something that their store owners won't.
That's right, employees were looking for the town to do something that their store owners were not inclined to do.
Right.
All right.
Which is-
I think we've all
All right.
shared our thoughts.
Yep.
But anyway, I may dial in for another question, but thank you for your listening. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks, Rob.
I do have another hand up.
Okay.
Karen Sumwell, please unmute yourself. Karen?
Yes.
Hi, Karen.
Hi, how are you all? First, I was just thinking, some of you were talking about Omicron and how it's not as serious, but it spreads more. I think the major strain here is Delta, and we should be talking about Delta because our numbers in Newcastle, 60, 62 yesterday, 61 today of active cases, they're up 53% in the last week. That's a huge jump. The last time we had 61 cases in Newcastle was the first week in March. and we had a mask mandate then, and I think Newcastle had a mask mandate way before the state had one, and I think it took a leadership role. Also, there was a note that hospitalizations, we don't know what they are in Newcastle, but we do know in Westchester that hospitalizations are up 71% in the last 14 days. So we're not in the safe zone, and this is because of Delta, basically now. I also want to point out that both our governor and our Latimer said the same thing about a week apart. They all said, and I want to add one thing to what, well, they both said what we need to do is encourage people to vaccinate, to get boosters, and both of them said we have to encourage people to wear masks in indoor settings and whenever they're with strangers. So, but they also said that this is an individual decision, but if the individuals don't take this decision, the government is going to have to do it. So basically, they said wear masks. Everybody should wear a mask indoors. It wasn't just vaccinate, booster. It was wear mask indoors, and they both were very strong on that. So, what I want to ask each of you, I actually know what two of you think, but I want to ask those who have not already expressed this. Do you agree with Governor Hochul and Latimer that people should wear masks indoors? I'm not asking you if they should be mandated. I'm asking you if people, given the situation we're in now, should be wearing masks indoors, regardless of their vaccination status. That's a question.
Who are you asking?
I'm asking the two of you have already answered the question.
Well, I don't know if I did, but I think people should, yes. I don't know if I answered that.
Yeah, you and Lori have answered the question.
Oh,
I'm just
sorry.
asking the other two. I'm just trying to figure out where we are.
Too. Hi, Karen, it's Lisa Katz. So as I indicated, I do want to encourage people. I think we should be encouraging people not just to get vaccinated, but also to be wearing masks. But I'm not at the point yet where I want to mandate it, but I
No,
certainly,
I'm just asking you, do you think it's a good idea that people wear masks inside
I do,
at this point?
yes.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And Lori? No, you already, Laura?
Yes, I didn't want to interrupt you.
Okay,
So,
go ahead.
Again, I think that people should wear masks, but candidly, I only wear masks when I go to stores. I don't wear a mask at the gym. But again, that's just my personal preference, and I know that sounds a little bit wishy-washy, and I apologize, Karen. But I just wanted to be upfront and honest with you.
I think everybody makes their own decision.
Yeah.
About this. I'm just wondering, because not only the governor and Latimer have said it, but almost every single public health official in the United States over the last 2 weeks has said everybody should wear masks indoors and that they do it too. So I think that's where we are, and it's because of Delta. It's not because of Omicron, it's because of Delta. This is really, we're having our summer Delta waves up here. The South had it in the summer, we're having it now. And the states with the highest vaccination rate in the country, in New England, are the states with some of the highest COVID rates right now. So that leaves us, I think, we're in a totally different situation. My last question was one that I think that Jeremy asked, and that is, how bad do things have to get before we decide that we want a mask mandate, whether it be in, whatever level you wanted, just jump another level. My personal opinion is, the most important places, like the previous gentleman said, are those places that are essential for people to go to, like grocery stores and the pharmacies and big stores like that. whether you want to go to a small store or not, I think you don't have to go there, but you do have to go to a grocery store and a pharmacy. Most people do, and so I think those should be sort of the first places we look at if we're going to do this.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Carrie, any other?
That's all for now.
Okay. All right, so I think we are going to table this for now. It's certainly going to be an ongoing discussion, and I'm certainly going to think on it and speak with the county and the state as well. All right, we're a little behind, so do you want to move to senior bus?
Sure, yeah, actually, we're gonna table that discussion as we are still working on it. The next thing is a list of administrative items, I'll just go through rather quickly. Payment of claims, we got an authorization to award the bid for the spring 2020 plantings. It's the Q pack for $6,319.40.
I'm sorry, someone just sent in that they had their hand up. I hadn't seen it. Do you want to continue?
You know what, just give it 2 seconds. Just hang on and let's just
Okay.
run through this and then we'll come back.
Okay, we've got an authorization to release a performance bond for plantings. That was for 91 Bedford Road. I'm sorry. We've got authorization authorizing the release of Roaring Brook Road improvements, that performance bond, tree preservation, mitigation improvements, and wetlands. That's all part of Chappaqua Crossing. Ed, do you want me to go through these separately, or do you want to just talk about the omnibus one?
We can hit that in the late edition right now if you'd like.
Okay, sure.
Right, so in the consent, this item that we're coming to right now is to lower the amount of the performance bonds for the retail portion of Chappaqua Crossing as that part of the property has been built out. The town engineer has looked at the level of completion and determined that the performance bonds can be reduced from about 4.6 million to about 1 million
Right.
to secure the remaining work. The late addition that's going to be on your agenda later tonight is to authorize the town clerk to accept replacement bonds. We've been advised that Summit Greenfield is in the process of contracting to sell the retail portion of the property. When that happens, when that sale closes, the new owner will step into the shoes of Summit Greenfield and be required to post the same bonds that Summit Greenfield had in place. So the late edition resolution is just getting a little bit ahead of that, since we're in there anyway dealing with these reductions in amount. We're also going to authorize the town clerk to accept the replacement bonds when they're ready.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, there's a resolution authorizing the termination of the indemnification and insurance agreement for Chappaqua Crossing, a resolution authorizing the acceptance of a cash bond agreement, this is for Kingfisher, and the resolution authorizing acceptance of an amendment to and restatement of the water easement agreement and agreement releasing and terminating drainage easements, also Kingfisher. And last but not least, a resolution adopting the local law which adopts the stretch code, which we'll be talking about a little bit later on. There will also be a request for a couple of hires that were discussed in executive session, and the acceptance of a settlement agreement on personnel. And I
Okay.
think that covers our administrative items.
All right, thank you.
So we can, yeah, if you want. we can-
Carrie, you want to just put whoever,
Sure. Nicole Roche, your line is open.
hi, Nicole?
Oh, hi. Yeah, thank you for having this important discussion. And the main point that I want to make has been addressed, so I'm going to be very brief. But we do know that there are many places in town that already require the mask mandate, the library, town hall, public transportation, and then some places voluntarily do it, like Drug Mart and DeChico's, that does not require it but requests it, which everybody seems to respond to. I think the pushback comes mostly from merchants and the gyms. I personally can't imagine being in a gym with everybody breathing heavily. without a mask. But I think that, one of you brought this up, that I think that merchants would be very happy. I mean, I can't speak for them, but to have the town make the mandate, because they are uncomfortable requiring mandates and afraid of losing their customers. And I think they would be very happy if the onus was taken off of them. I was actually in a store the other day that required a buzzer to get in, and I sort of jokingly said, "Oh, is this because of the looting in Beverly Hills?" And the merchant said, "No, it's because I can't have people coming in here and touching everything, because then the next merchant is not comfortable." So I think that would be a service to the community. I mean, this is, one point, a service to the community to mandate it for all merchants and take the onus off of them. The other thing I just want to say is I taught infection control in a nursing academy for many years. Viruses mutate. That is their job. And I'm afraid that when they appear, it's generally already too late. So just a couple of thoughts to consider as you make your decision. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nicole.
Thank you, Nicole.
And just to Lauren's point before, I hated hearing that people are scared to email the town board. So I just want everyone to know that you should always feel free to email the town board, and there's never judgment, and we appreciate all of your input, and it's not necessarily public, so you can always feel free to email the town board and let us know your views. Oh, it is public, I guess, you're right.
Sorry, full disclosure.
You're right, it is, but we still want to hear from you, and you should never feel intimidated to let your thoughts be known.
To clarify, Jill, it's public, but it's not necessarily published.
It's accessible.
It's
If
accessible,
somebody wanted to
but-
ask,
right.
knew what to
Yeah.
ask
Upon
for,
request, but it's not like in the
it
newspaper.
goes into-
Right.
Right.
Many of them that may not have heard of it, something called the foil. We're not familiar with it. Okay, so
All right, anything else? Okay, so then, and anyone else on the phone, Carrie? Okay, so I think we can just take a motion to adjourn the work session and open our town board meeting.
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So do we need another motion to open the work session, or did we just do that all
no, we just
together?
did it all together.
Okay, great. All right, so welcome, everybody, to the town board meeting of December 7th, 2021. Before we get, sorry, we're running a little late. Before we get started, I had something I just wanted to kind of read to the public, and for everyone watching tonight, you may notice that we've moved our seats a bit, and I wanted to just sort of explain what's going on. That on Friday, the county officially certified the election results throughout Westchester. And so tonight, right before the meeting, I was sworn in as your new town supervisor. And as I've said before, I am humbled that you've elected me, and I vow to work hard to represent our entire town, every resident, every merchant, and every neighborhood. And I've been sworn in tonight because due to Ivy Pool's relocation to Chicago, we were operating with a vacancy in the town supervisor position. The remainder of the newly elected town board will be sworn in January, as is typical. I can't talk in this. I also wanted to just take this opportunity to acknowledge Jeremy, Lauren, and Lori. Thank you guys for your commitment to the town and for putting yourselves out there to serve our community. It's not always easy, especially during a pandemic, and I know it takes great personal and professional sacrifice, but your hard work and achievements have made our community better and stronger. And of course, I want to thank Jeremy especially for your hard work and dedication to Newcastle and stepping up as acting supervisor and doing these incredibly stressful and unprecedented times. And I do look forward to continuing to work with you on the board as town council member.
Thank you, and absolutely. We absolutely will.
And just to our talented and dedicated town employees, I also look forward to working together with you. It cannot be said enough, but the public servants who wake up every single day to make Newcastle work, especially during these challenging times, are owed a great debt of gratitude from all of us, so thank you. And with that being said, we can start the meeting. I actually did have a few announcements I wanted to just make quickly, and then nothing for the supervisor's report. I wanted to quickly thank Lauren Levin, our merchants, and the Chappaqua Millwood Chamber of Commerce for a wonderful wine around town last weekend. Unfortunately, I had vertigo and wine would not have been a good idea, but everyone I've spoken to said it was fabulous. I know, everyone loved it, and this is a great new tradition, and I know everyone's looking forward to the next one. Please join us tomorrow, December 8th at 8 p.m. for our second annual International Human Rights Day program presented by the Town Holocaust and Human Rights Committee and Greeley's Enough Club. Featuring Elizabeth Rubin and Sunita Alizada. Elizabeth is an American journalist and award-winning war correspondent, and she's currently involved with international evacuation efforts of Afghan refugees. Sunita is an Afghan rapper and activist who grew up under Taliban rule. Her family was on the Taliban kill list, and through Elizabeth's efforts were evacuated to safety. So join us tomorrow night to hear their stories. Advanced registration is required, and please look at the town's Facebook page for registration links. It was way too long to read. A Charlie Brown Christmas continues at the Chappaqua Performing Arts Center. I did get to see that. It was fabulous. Make sure to see it before it moves to Broadway. The theater is following Broadway COVID guidelines, and visit Chappaq's website at chappaq.org for tickets and more information about those guidelines. And finally, please join us this Sunday at 3:30 for a garden dedication ceremony to honor and thank those who gave of themselves to help others during the pandemic and to remember those who we have lost. And that's all I have for announcements. Anything from the town administrator report?
Nope, nothing for me, thank you.
Okay. So we'll move to public comment, new business. I don't see anyone here. Is there anyone online, Carrie?
No, if anyone's interested, just raise your hand.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no hands, going once, going twice. All right, we're gonna move to our public hearing. So we are going to discuss the 2021 budget tonight with our fabulous controller, Rob Deary. So can I get a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, take it away.
Great, thank you Supervisor Katz and town board members. I always appreciate the opportunity to present my budget to the town. As you'll see in a minute when I go through the steps that we've taken. The process started in July, and it's finally wrapping up about 5 months later. So it's a long process, but I think this is my 11th budget that I've prepared, and pretty much have it down pat at this point. So just to talk first about the budget timeline, starting in mid-July, we meet with all the department heads. We prepare reports for them with prior year totals. I think they get about 3 years worth of comparable numbers from prior years. And we ask them to, they get about a month. We ask them to go home, review their projections for the coming year, and come back and meet with us in August. They sit down late August with Jill and myself. We kind of fine tune their numbers, talk about any changes from the prior year, any additions or subtractions, and at that point, they give me the numbers to create the tentative budget. That comes to you in early October. At that point, the department heads have an opportunity to meet with the town board. We have those individual meetings, and they get to present their budget to you, each department, and kind of justify their requests. Towards the end of October, the town board, if they wish to make any changes, and I will say this year we didn't have, we have one single line change. I think we moved some money from the boards and commissions over to the Council on Race and Equity. But that was about the only change. It didn't result in a change in the tax rate or the tax levy or anything like that. It was just a small change. And then what we are presenting tonight is called the preliminary budget. That was provided on November 10th. Tonight's the public hearing, and if all goes well, we will adopt this next Tuesday night. Okay, to review, we are in the 11th year of the tax cap. I think all the town board members, current and past, are proud to say we have never needed to exceed the tax cap in the 11 years. I think that's a testament to the board, to the town staff, to everybody involved, controlling our expenses and kind of maximizing our revenues. Just to kind of touch on what the tax cap is, it pertains to the tax levy, not the tax rate. And the tax cap is a lesser of 2% for the rate of inflation. I think we've all seen the global economy this year is kind of going through the roof. The inflation rate is pretty high right now, so we actually had a 2.0 number, which is the first time in several years that we've gone to the maximum. By comparison, last year it was 1.56%. Another number that factors into the equation is the tax-based growth factor. This changes by each municipality, and it changes each year based on the changes to the tax roll. The growth factor for 2022 is actually a little bit lower than 2021. You see 1.0039%. And based on the formula there and the prior year rollover, as we didn't use everything last year either, the town could have increased the tax levy by $873,538 to remain under the cap. Our actual levy increase was $671,116. It's about 3.03% levy increase for the total levy. And again, we were significantly under the cap again. Just to show you the actual calculation for that, it's based on the actual levy from 2021. So you take the middle column, you add the general and highway levy as well as all the special districts, and you come up with that figure of $22,118,000. You take that number and multiply it by the growth factor of 1.0039, and then add the tax cap of 2.00%. On top of that number, you take the carryover amount that we were able to carry over from last year, $343,188, and you come up with the total tax levy limit for 2022. It was $22,991,725, and you see the preliminary budget. The total levy is $22,789,304, where we are $202,421 under the cap. Here's a historical chart that gives us, I think, about 10 years worth of information. You see the blue line that's going up steadily, that's the overall tax levy, and the pink line that goes back and forth is the actual tax rate, or the percentage increase of the levy. So you do see last year, or projected, for next year, the 3.03 is the highest we've had in a while. I'll talk about that in a minute. That pertains to the refuse contract that increased significantly. It's a summary of our total budget. If you look all the way to the left, that kind of summarizes each of our funds. The general and highway fund are the major funds that each taxpayer is responsible for. Anything underneath that, water and sewer, the vast majority of residents pay, but not everyone. And then underneath that are all the different special districts that pertain only to people that benefit from those specific districts. The next column over is the total appropriation, which is the total amount of each of those funds' budgets. If you look to the bottom, those total $45,113,063. So that's the total amount of our budget. The columns to the right of that show revenue coming from sources other than taxes. You have a couple of columns for fund balance, both for operating and for capital and debt service. And then the final column shows the amount raised by taxes. Total amount for 2022 is $22,789,304. Just get into a couple of the specific budget lines for 2022. As I mentioned before, related to the large tax levy or largest tax levy increase we've had in a while is the renegotiation of the refuse contract. For the first time in 7 years, we had to renegotiate the contract. This has been discussed quite a bit over the last year. Unfortunately, due to the global markets and also some local issues related to the refuse disposal, our increase came in almost $1 million over prior year.
We bid that twice, correct?
We did bid that twice,
And
so
only received one
Yeah.
response. So
each time, yeah.
So in the same response, so if you look at those numbers, but for that drastic increase, we'd be in a vastly different place.
Yeah, definitely.
And I would just say, again, that's a testament to you and your staff that you, during COVID, you've kept us, again, but for this, in an incredible place, so thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So unfortunately, we knew this was coming, as Jeremy said. We went out to bid, I think, early summer. The number came back, it wasn't great. We had one response. We actually reached out to several other carters, and we thought we might get some interest in putting it back out to bid. Unfortunately, we didn't have any other interest, and the same company came back with the same bid, and we were forced to accept that. The good news is it's a shorter contract than 7 years, so we're not locked in anymore. It's a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options. We believe that probably in a year or so, we're going to take a look at what our other options might be going forward at the end of the 3 years. One of them could be bringing it in-house. We will explore that. That would require significant investment in both capital. We'd have to purchase all the equipment and a significant increase in the staff at the refuse and recycling center. But it is one option that's on the table. We're not certain where the global markets will go in the future. One thing the 2022 budget does is we did increase road paving again. I think Lisa knows when she first joined the board back about 8 years ago, road paving was kind of hit and miss. We actually had years where we didn't pave any roads, which was unfortunate, but it certainly was, I think, at that time, the highest it got ever was about $500,000. So we steadily increased that number, and once again, we're able to increase it this year to $1.125 million. That's in part because the money coming from the state has increased for us. So we get 3 sources of funding for road paving. We get CHIPS money, we get extreme winter recovery money typically, and Pave New York money. So Commissioner of Public Works Carey has let us know that that number is slated to increase about $120,000 next year. So we did put that back into the road paving budget. And we've done that in past years. When we've determined there was a surplus in certain years, we've put additional monies back into that. So that's kind of, this year we actually budgeted it, and because we have been told to expect it. The 2022 budget maintains all the funding from the past years for the town board and advisory boards. The BAB remains at $25,000. Again, that was a line that I think when Supervisor Katz started was about $500. That was increased to $25,000. I think everybody sees the results of that through the downtown, the beautiful Christmas lights that are hanging right now and the snowflakes. That comes out of that line. And during the summer months, the hanging baskets as well come out of that line.
So it looks really good, the lights.
We're actually gonna see what we could do about maybe keeping the lights on the poles. Think about that.
Yeah. We need warm white lights for Millwood.
Mhm.
And in the parking lot.
I mentioned a minute ago we did maintain town boards and commissions at $10,000. We did, based on Councilmember Morton's recommendation, we did shift $5,000 over to a new budget line titled Council on Race and Equity. And the town board special projects line is maintained at $25,000.
Rob, it's the Committee on Race and Equity, not the council.
That's correct. I guess the council was the
Original.
short-term
precursor.
option, and the
Yeah.
committee is the long-term, yep, correct. The 2022 budget also includes the purchase of 3 police vehicles. We have restored our workforce. We actually went back to 116 full-time positions. We reduced staff last year by 1 laborer position due to the pandemic. We have restored that in the 2022 budget. And how did my screen stop sharing?
It's back.
Yeah, I think you'd go one more page.
This shows a breakdown of the $45 million budget, just kind of a pie chart showing the vast majority of that budget, 65%, goes into the town general and highway fund. Those are the 2 funds I mentioned that pertain to each resident of the town. You see the water district is the next highest at about 21% of the budget, then the refuse fund at 9%. Now I'll cover a few of the key revenue sources. We'll start out first with the general fund. County sales tax, we are projecting a $700,000 increase over the 2021 budget. We have seen, we weren't sure at the beginning of 2021 with the pandemic. This time last year, we were very conservative on that estimate. If you recall, in 2019, the county added a 1% addition to the sales tax. I think that took effect in August, so we didn't see the full result of that in 2019. Due to COVID, we didn't see the full result, as the second and third quarter were difficult quarters for sales tax. So we kind of, for the projection for 2021, we left it about 3.3 million, and for 2022, we're pretty comfortable moving that number up to about $4 million. Mortgage tax figure, we've increased that about 25,000 from the 2021 budget to 950,000. I don't yet have the second installment of the mortgage tax for this year. I will tell you we're going to significantly exceed the mortgage tax estimate for this year. I'm sure everybody has seen the housing market. It's gone through the roof. While we're comfortable this year that we'll exceed that budget, I'm not sold on what happens next year, and I think we're taking a conservative approach. We've raised it a little bit, but I think we're comfortable at 950. Commuter parking fees is one, probably our biggest budget line that took a hit due to COVID. Pre-pandemic, that line was at about $925,000 to $950,000. We dropped it in 2021 as we were uncertain whether we would begin to see the parking lot fill up again. We dropped that budget to $500,000. It remains to be seen if we'll hit that $500,000 figure. I think we've got about 200,000 or so in right now, Christina.
Correct.
And December is the renewal month. So we are seeing the parking lot fill up a bit. Whether or not we'll hit that target, I'm not certain. We're hopeful that 12 months from now, we see the parking lot fill up a little bit more. Even so, we're only bringing that number up to 600,000, which is about a little less than 2/3 of what the pre-pandemic number was. Building permits, we're comfortable increasing that number to 950,000 for 2022. 2021 saw just a significant increase in building permits. Anybody that's been in the building department sees they have not stopped the entire year. 2022, we can expect some money coming in from Chappaqua Crossing, I think, for some of the building permits there.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we're comfortable increasing that number.
Rob, I have a question, I guess, for the group about commuter parking. We got an inquiry by email this week about whether the town might be inclined to expand access to the parking lot to non-residents. What would we consider around that topic?
So
other
we
than
do
our-
extend access to non-residents. Non-residents are extended access to our annual parking. In addition, we have just shy of 100 pay-by-day spots. 2/3 of them are for residents, 1/3 of them are for anybody who drives into town, so it's another resident. What we don't do is we don't issue pay-by-day permits to non-residents. And that is the only limitation that we put on our parking. But other than that, we have put no limit on the number of annual permits that we are selling to residents. In years past, we had lotteries for non-residents, and we kept the number pretty low. Sometimes it was as low as 20 or 30. I think at this point it's 70, but we would not turn anyone away. But the pay-by-day parking is, I wouldn't recommend it to the board, only because there are only 100 spots, and 36 of them, I believe, are non-resident as it is, so I would not expand that.
Okay, thanks. I thought it was
I
important.
don't think we're not as appealing as we used to be, because at least coming back, there was an express that doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't remember, I'm drawing a blank if there's an express into the city, but there was.
I don't
coming-
think there
was
is
coming
yet.
out.
There used
No, that's
to
what I'm
be.
saying, so we don't have as much of an appeal for people who want to zip down a little quicker, so.
Yeah. Metro North claims that's because we don't have the ridership, and the ridership claims, well, if you had express
Right.
trains, we would be on them,
Right.
so sort of catch-22.
And if we end up getting, lucky enough that it's fully booked again, the train station, then we'd go back to the lottery for out of town.
Exactly.
So Jill, is there any, for lack of a better word, vehicle for the town to lobby to get an express stop
Oh,
returned?
To Metro North?
Yeah.
Happy to write an email or two. It's just, I can't promise them if they brought the expresses back that there would be people there, but it stands to, reason. People don't want to be on the train with the doors opening and,
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that, right, if we're not pushing for it, then it's just silence from our town. I don't see a harm to us.
No, I'm
for trying to
happy
to
write a letter.
advocate.
I mean, the part of the allure of the train is that it takes you less time than driving.
Right,
If it doesn't take you less time than driving, then, you're not the amenity you used to be.
Yeah.
So, sure.
I do think, just from what I'm hearing from people, if there was an express train, I think that train would be completely filled.
Yep.
More than any of the other ones, people would hop on that first.
yeah, and perhaps people who are choosing to drive would reverse that choice if they could take the express again.
Absolutely.
So,
Happy
yeah,
with
so I
that.
think it's, perhaps not fair of them to say ridership drives the decision, when likely the availability would drive the ridership.
Sir?
Sorry.
Just to continue with a few more revenue lines from the general fund. Concession income, this is what we get from Verizon and Altice. We get about $100,000 each quarter from the franchise fees. This is also the revenue we get from the cell tower in Millwood, as well as Bobo's at the train station. Summer camps, we left that number at $465,000. We did not reach that this year. We were able to run the summer camp in both 2020 and 2021 at a reduced level because of COVID, but we were still able to run it. What we weren't able to run these last 2 years was the on-the-go camp, which is probably our most popular camp. We are anticipating running that again in 2022, and that's why we're going to leave that number at 465. I will just remind the board that a lot of that is correlated to the expenditures. So if we don't bring in the revenue, then we don't spend the money. In particular, the on-the-go camp. That's where we're buying tickets to Yankees games and water parks and bowling and that type of thing. So if we don't bring in the revenue, then we don't have an expense on the other side of it either. I did mention before state aid chips. We expect that number to go up to $345,000 this year, an increase of $120,000. In the water fund, general water sales account for about $4.3 million, and water sales to Pleasantville about $1.5 million. Refuse fund, that's dwindled over the last few years. The compost and mulch sales and yard waste stays the same. We've mentioned this multiple times before, but we have a couple large pieces of equipment that we're trying to coax a few more years out of the costly machines, the horizontal grinder and the trommel screener. Bart thinks that by decreasing the usage there, we can get a few more years out of them. I think, Jill, it's also related to some of the residents at Chestnut Oaks that didn't enjoy hearing the backup alerts from our vehicles over there. And just showing some of the historical trends for our revenue sources over the years. You look at sales tax, the top one, you see where that's gone from 2.5 up to about a $4 million projection there. We're actually believe that the 2021 estimate's going to be a little bit higher than 4 million based on what I've seen so far. Obviously, we don't have the fourth quarter yet, and because of the holiday season, that's typically the largest quarter that we receive. You see mortgage tax over the years, that's the next kind of magenta colored line. It's kind of gone up and down a little bit. You see the number for 2021, that's an estimate that's pretty high. It may even go higher than that. We've seen good preliminary reports on the mortgage tax number. Building permits, again.
So Rob,
Sorry.
but you projecting this to go down for mortgage tax? Are you showing that going
So
down
I'm
for
showing it going
2022?
down versus the 2021 estimate is what I believe the actual will come in. So I am projecting it to go down from what we actually received this year, but versus the budget from 2021, I'm projecting actually a slight increase.
Okay, thank you.
See the parking permits over the years, just a little bit short of $1 million, and summer camps has held pretty steady between usually around $400,000 to $500,000. You see 2020 with a drastic drop there of about 116,000. That was, I think we were only able to run the one camp or a very limited camp. 2021 we expanded a little more. In 2022 we're hoping for the full revenue. And parking permits, you see where we were in 2020, about 87,000 out of an estimated 950,000 that year. Okay, revenue breakdown just by different component. About 51% of all of our revenue comes from property taxes. Sales tax, I think, is a big figure at 9%. Mortgage tax is lumped in with other governmental aid at about 1.6, and departmental income almost $4.5 million. Okay, on the other side of the ledger, I'll talk about some of the key expenditures. These are factors that are affecting multiple funds. First, we'll start with the employee benefits. I've mentioned this before, the town's involvement in the MEBCO consortium actually is going to allow us to have a very slight decrease in health insurance costs when compared over prior year. The decrease is because the MEBCO contract is actually staying flat, but as we have some of the older employees retire that weren't making contributions, and some of the newer employees that are hired are making larger contributions, the actual net cost to the town will go down slightly. The town's been with the MEBCO plan for about, it's over 20 years at least at this point. And over the last, I guess I'd say 5 or 6 years, I can't remember an increase. I think 3% is the largest we've had. I have seen in the news over the last couple of weeks, other municipalities are struggling with their healthcare costs. I think it was Mount Pleasant that I saw that was actually an article that was one of the drivers of their increases for 2022. And we're fortunate to say it won't be in our budget. We're actually projecting the New York State retirement to go down quite a bit next year. The reason for that is the 2021 rate, the retirement system takes a snapshot on April 1st of kind of where their investments are, and they project the contribution for municipalities for the next year based on that April 1st number. And if you remember where we were on April 1st of 2020, the market had just crashed. It was at the very beginning of COVID. The market went down significantly. They took the snapshot, based our projections on that number, which meant our increase for 2021 was pretty significant. When we got to April 1st of 2021, the market had rebounded, and our projection for next year is significantly lower. Workers' compensation, we're actually budgeting a slight decrease in that as well. About 8 years ago, before we changed carriers with, we were with a company called Perma. Our claims history was pretty, I guess, terrible at that point is all I can say. We had a premium increase close to $1 million was our premium that year. We were approached by RJ and Falwell & Son, and they offered us a competitive quote, and it was in the 500,000s at that point. And we've steadily brought it down since then. And if you're not familiar with workers' compensation, the rates are based on your claims history. The town has significantly reduced our claims over the last 8 years, and that's reflected in the renewal rate for next year. So the town continues to do a good job there. I think that's all the department heads. We've done a lot of training since Jill took over as town administrator. We've done probably quarterly training, I think, at this point for all the employees. The DPW staff goes through specific training, the police go through specific training, and we've been able to reduce the amount of frequent flyers, as we called them. We would have certain staff members that were multiple injuries per year, and we've
Accident prone.
What's that?
Accident prone.
Accident prone, yes, I suppose that. But we've all but eliminated that at this point. Another factor affecting multiple funds are the debt payment, and that's the debt service typically related to capital costs. That number goes down. We last borrowed money in 2018, so as the principal gets paid off, the interest payments become less each year. I've got a chart later on in this presentation that shows a multi-year forecast for that. We did project our legal expenses to go up by about $50,000 next year. Keenan Bean, our counsel, has agreed to keep the retainer flat versus 2021. They've kept the hourly rate for anything outside of the retainer flat as well. That increase reflects 2 union contracts that we have, one that's currently out, one that is going to be out at the end of next year, and there will be some significant costs related to the negotiations for those contracts. More key expenditures over the highway fund. Talked before about the road paving. We're increasing that $120,000. Cost for snow removal, both salt and overtime for salaries, that remains unchanged year over year. That number's kind of hard to predict. Obviously, it's weather-based. We're right, some years we're over that, some years we're under that. If you look at like a 7-year average, we're pretty close to the average, and that's what those numbers are. Brush and tree work, that remains unchanged from last year. We had raised that number about $75,000 from what it was a couple years ago. We have seen a significant increase in the number of storms and the intensity of the storms that have come through the area. I think everybody knows after Isaias and Ida and those types of storms, there are a lot of downed trees and tree limbs, and we contract that work out. It's just a lot of the tree removal is beyond the scope of what our public works guys can do, so we do have to contract that out. Moving over to the water fund, some of the largest cost factors there, the cost of the raw water. You actually, unfortunately, have to buy the water. Some people don't understand that. I get calls from residents from time to time, and they think the water is free for us. It's not actually. So There's quite a few components that go into that. We buy the raw water and then we treat it, and then the cost of distribution. So there's definitely a cost associated with that. The water treatment plant operations, that's Suez. They're the company that runs the plant for us. That is a little over $1 million, that contract. The electricity from the both the water treatment plant and the Croton backup plant. The backup electricity, we're projecting that to go down about $85,000 total next year. That's because over the last couple of years, we've been forced to use the Croton backup as the DEP, Joe? I forget which one.
DEC.
DEC are working on the aqueduct, and that causes us to shut down our main water source, and we have to use the backup source, which uses a significant amount of electricity to draw the water up. That project, I think, completes middle of January next year.
Next year.
And they don't expect it to repeat next winter. I think we take a couple years off before they go back to it, is that? Yeah, so we've adjusted the budget accordingly. The refuse fund, there you see the increase in the refuse collection. That's the contract to Santa Pro. It's now totaling about $1.9 million a year. It's up $738,000 from last year. Also increasing are the transfer site charges, up to about $707,000. It's up about 182,500, I'm sorry, over prior year. A couple of the issues with the transfer site, I think we were using a transfer site in Mount Kisco that now we're not able to use anymore, and I think we're finding increasing difficulty finding places for disposal.
Right, and locations that are far further away, much further away, so like this, the trucks would be able to turn around quickly and get back on the route. Mount Kisco, now they're going up to Peekskill. That additional gas, time, just means that the whole operation is less efficient than it used to be.
Just showing a breakdown of the $45 million worth of expenditures in the budget. Contractual costs are about 38% of the total budget. Personnel, which are the salaries, overtime, about $13.5 million, and employee benefits, about 20% of the budget at about $8.9 million. Done a couple breakdowns here. This is an average tax bill for a resident of the town of Newcastle. This is just the general and highway funds, and it just shows where your tax dollars are going. An average tax bill is about $2,709. Of that amount, about $680 goes to the police, about $625 to employee benefits, and the amount that I always like to highlight, the snow removal, about $54 of the average tax bill goes to snow removal. I think that's pretty good for those guys working overnight, weekends, and you go to sleep at night and there's a bad snowstorm, you wake up in the morning, you can, for the most part, get in your car and drive to work. So those guys are working hard through the night. Chart, I'm just going to demonstrate the refuse costs from 2010, and we talked about the significant increase in the budget and what that's going to mean to each taxpayer. If you look at 2010, when we started at the start of this chart, the actual rate at that time was about $525 per parcel. We were able to bring that down in 2011 when we dropped down to refuse collection to 1 day a week. We brought that number to about $485, and that was under the old contract that we had, so we did see some benefit, but we didn't see the complete benefit from the once-a-week garbage collection until we renegotiated, and that's where you see that drop from 2014 to 2015. And there we've stayed pretty steady. We've stayed at $440 for 7 years. Unfortunately, the new garbage contract is going to result in an increase up to about $500 $525 or so. I think it's going to go back up in 2022. Unfortunately, we're going to see similar increases from 22, 23, and probably into 24 as we kind of get level. We talked before about the refuse contract and how we kind of leveled it off. We used some fund balance and we used some increases in the per parcel charge to kind of avoid exceeding the tax cap. If we had taken that lump sum increase for 2022, we would have exceeded the tax cap for sure. Okay, one of the topics that came up a couple years ago were the fire districts, so I began to include these in my presentation back then. Just a reminder that a couple of the districts, the Newcastle Fire District, the Millwood Fire District, I include those in my budget book. They are no part of the town's budget. We do collect taxes for them, but we remit 100% of that money back to the fire districts. Those are voted on in each fire district, and they're a separate part of the town's budget. The Northern Fire Protection District does pertain to the town's budget. That's a separate fund. Those are for some areas of the town that aren't able to be reached, at least on a timely basis, by either of the other two fire districts. So we pay the village and town of Mount Kisco to provide fire protection services. About 2 or 3 years ago, residents in that district were hit with a significant increase as Mount Kisco had, I think, 3 firehouses that underwent renovations, I think to the tune of about $15 or $16 million, and those costs got passed along to our residents. Just showing the average per parcel cost for fire protection in the town. You see the top, the Millwood Fire District. We know a couple years ago they built new facilities there, and that's why you see they are at the moment at the top of the 3 fire protection districts. The pink line, the Northern Fire Protection, you see the jump from 2019 to 2020, and then from 2020 to 2021. That reflects their increased capital costs there. And you see the Newcastle Fire District is below all 3 of those, or the other 2, I'm sorry. And I think they've got some proposals in the future that may increase that if the town votes on that. Showing a comparison of the 2022 tax rate versus 2021. You see we had an increase of about $8 million total assessed value. When I project all these numbers out, I take average assessed value of $170,000. It's not the exact middle of the town. Just for an apples to apples comparison, I've left that number over the years at $170,000, just so we can make an accurate comparison. Market value from 2021 to 2022 changed slightly, and that's based on the equalization rate that we get from the state. Doesn't mean your house actually went down. In fact, it's probably increased significantly due to the market. The tax rate increased 0.87% over prior year. And just to show you the tax cap and the tax rate growth factor, you see the increase in one, the decrease in the other, and the total tax levy went up 3.03%. Okay, this shows the total tax bill, everything that a resident would pay, including Westchester County, Chappaqua Central School District, and Town of Newcastle's special districts, and the fire districts as well.
Rob, do you have that for Ossining residents? For Ossining School District, just of CCSD? Because we have like 500 parcels?
We do, yeah.
Just in the future, maybe do that as well.
Sure, yeah. I haven't done that in the past, but I definitely could. Just showing a breakdown of $100 bill. If you were to break that down. $74 of that $100 goes to the CCSD and the library. Town of Newcastle and Westchester County, very similar, about $10. In the special districts and the fire protection districts, similar as well, about $250 and $275. Mentioned before, here's the 10-year debt service schedule. You see there's a drop between 2022 and 2023. Another pretty big drop down there in 2025. The town typically borrows money every 3 to 5 years. The last borrowing we had was in 2018. I would anticipate another borrowing in 2022, possibly towards the middle or end of the year. I don't think it'll get into 2023. Going to kind of look at the interest rates out there. I'll have an opportunity to talk to the new board members about some of the capital costs that the town will be facing over the next few years, and we'll come up with a borrowing schedule and probably look to go out for bond. Again, maybe the middle, maybe into the fall of next year. Okay, a chart showing the historical fund balance from 2011 through 2020. This is a number we report once a year. That's why it only goes through 2020. That number comes to us from our financial statements. So we report that. It's not actually a moving number throughout the year. It only changes at the end of the year based on whether the town has a surplus or a deficit in any of the funds. If you look back at the beginning of this chart in 2011, the magenta colored lines, town was about 1.4 million, which was only about 6% of appropriations, general fund balance, and at that time that was pretty low for us. The state comptroller and our auditors would prefer that number be around 15 or 20%. If you look, the number has risen steadily. 2018, 2019, you see the 2020 number reflects the decrease due to the appropriation of fund balance for the 2021 budget. And the better news, though, is we can project through 2023. These reflect the gradual drawdowns of the fund balance for the capital costs, again related mostly to the downtown project. I will say that within these projections, I've only calculated the amount that we have, that we intend to appropriate in each budget. I have not projected any increases. Typically, you provide a balanced budget, but I think in the 11 years that I've done budgets, I've only had a single year that we had a deficit in the general fund. So I would expect these numbers to be higher than what's shown here. And I think that's it for the presentation. Any board members? I think there may be some people online that have any questions. I'd be happy to answer those.
Any board members?
Do not have a question, only compliments.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Rob.
Anyone in the audience? All right, Carrie, is there anyone online?
Yes, hold on one moment. Rob, please unmute yourself.
Hi. Rob, thank you for the presentation. One question I have, a lot of the numbers did move around throughout the year based upon the tones I was getting in things that you published and these presentations. Things actually look favorable for, as you mentioned at the very end, in addition, a higher fund balance than we might be projecting there on the pages. And my question would be, is there anything, or what is the capacity or ability to actually contribute more fund balance to this year's budget to lower the amount of the tax rate increase. I know that there were some incremental revenues that came in that prevented the amount of drawdown for 2021 being nearly as much as we thought it was going to be. And I think somebody mentioned there's about $600,000 or so extra that came in. Is there any ability to take any portion of that and lower the actual funding tax increase? Because what we have now, I think, would be one of the larger ones. And I understand exactly why it happened. And it's not a blame issue. And I understand the refuse contract went up. And given the size of our total budget, even that amount that went up had a big significant increase on our rates. Is there any way to offset some of that with fund balance?
So Rob, you always have the option to offset any of that with fund balance, and that would be the board's discretion. A couple of things I would caution though with that. So, last year we left the levy flat, the general and highway fund. We didn't increase that. That kind of came back to bite us this year because each year the baseline for the tax cap for the next year is what you've done this year. So the fact that we didn't increase the general and highway fund last year meant we actually had less room this year to increase when we had the significant hit on the refuse fund. So I think a kind of a slow and steady increase has always been our approach. It's been my approach, and in prior boards, I think it's been their approach as well, the slow and steady increase. And you mentioned the refuse fund. So in fund accounting, a lot of the tax cap pertains to the total levy for the town, but as far as allocating fund balance, a lot of what will come in this year that would be a surplus would be general fund balance, and where my deficit would end up being would be out of the refuse fund. I can't take general fund balance and apply that to the refuse fund, unfortunately. So the largest part of the increase for the taxpayers this year is going to be that refuse fund. And unfortunately, we have already allocated a significant amount of fund balance there. Let me give you the number.
I'm aware that the refuse fund is what's driving the large increase, though when the tax bill comes, it all comes out of a single check. And when that highlight number comes, in terms of the percentage of the increase, that comes out as a single number as well. And if there's any ability to lower that number, I'd be interested to see if there's any appetite for discussion about that.
Yeah, I'll just point out, we are allocating $876,000 worth of fund balance out of the refuse fund. And that, when I spoke to the board during the preparation of the budget, I presented kind of a multi-year plan to draw down some of the fund balance and offset the tax increase slightly in that way. And I think, over the years, we've drawn down fund balance based on the borrowing. I will tell you that, the borrowing that I spoke of a minute ago that's gonna happen this year, we've gotta borrow for some projects. We've got a water main that is gonna be replaced down Route 120. We've got cement relining for some other water mains. We've got some heavy equipment for DPW. We've got some Mack trucks. We've got a street sweeper. Those are coming. We're gonna have to borrow. Yeah. We're gonna have to borrow more money for the downtown project as well. So we're finally about to close that project out. I think the board's seen in the last couple of weeks, we've approved the maintenance bond for ELQ. We've approved Boswell finally completing their last act. And once all that happens, we can close out that project. But there were significant overruns on that project, and we're gonna have to borrow additional monies, either that or use some of our fund balance to offset that. So, at this point, I would caution against allocating any more fund balance. You are correct, the numbers that I have seen indicate we're gonna have a surplus at the end of this year. But, you know, I think the kind of slow and steady approach with the general and highway fund and the biggest increase we're seeing is with the refuse fund.
Like I say, look, I respect the input. I wanted to raise the question, even to the extent that we can get rid of the 3 in front of that number, that would, you know, and maybe it's superficial. I think sometimes some of the decrease of the rates at the county level are superficial, but they're effective. And if there's any ability even just to put a 2 moniker up on top, I think even that is worthwhile discussing. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Okay, we can also have, I think it's John Rose.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Hi, John.
John, just.
Hello, everybody. Sorry I'm not there. I don't know what happened to the spelling of my name. That's all right, I guess. Anyway, first off, I wanted to thank you for that budget presentation. One thing I learned in my days of accountancy is that the budgets are built based on past years. And it's what we did last year and how much more are we paying. It seldom is how much less are we paying. So the decision that is key and ultimately implemented in taxation is what are we doing, what should we be doing, and how much is it going to cost. All of that being said, we can see it in some specific items. Those are basically my two of my questions. Clearly, we've spent, the town has kindly and done a great job in spending more money to improve the roads, which we needed. And all the cars in the town of Newcastle, thank you for that. And they'll thank you for even more repairs going forward. So those costs, I would anticipate, would be going up. The my first question relates to parking costs and revenue. So how we can apply the parking costs, you know, to the revenue that we generate. And also, what can we do to improve the efficacy to our downtown merchants? Because parking is key. And how does that work? So I guess my question is this. In terms of the parking costs, have we thought, we currently have unmetered parking in the downtown, and I'm not suggesting that we should put meters there, but that's a key component of revenue to our sister municipalities. We don't do that. It's clearly an advantage, I think, to our community. I think as long as we've elected to do that, we should continue to do that. Because it's a plus. What can we do to improve our town relates directly to those parking costs and how we handle it. So my basic question is, where do we generate the estimates for the parking costs for the year forward, and what do we expect to do to improve that? And then once we know what the costs are, how can we implement improved revenue based on the actual service that's provided there?
So
I guess we do that. I have one more question based on another key component. What can we do to increase our parking revenue and things that we can use, the highway funds, so we can directly apply those funds to the work that we do? our roads need improvement. You've worked hard at it over the last year, and the maintenance departments have done great jobs in doing whatever they could do. And also, remember, county roads are a key component of this, which is not included in our budget for Lowell.
So the first part of your question, and where do we come up with the projection? Yeah, if you saw the revenue chart that I did, a multi-year chart.
Yeah,
The
I have it.
parking permit revenue was pretty steady over that period of time. You know, last year was, due to COVID, was significantly lower. 2021, somewhat better. In 2022, we're hoping increases again. There's nothing scientific there. That's our best guess that we will see people returning to work. The parking permit renewals come in December, so unfortunately we won't know those numbers until 12 months from now. But I think we're optimistic. We've seen the parking lot start to fill up over the last couple of weeks. I know Christina's reporting steady renewals, and I'm seeing that in the bank account. So, I mean, there's nothing scientific, unfortunately, due to COVID right now that I can really predict. I have no way of knowing how many people are going back into, going to be commuting back to the city. I think, Jill, wasn't it Eric that provided us with some numbers, and he said it was about a 40% decrease, he thought, of people going back into the city versus pre-pandemic, and that's similar to the decrease that we have. We have about a 35% decrease or so over prior years. So those estimates are estimates at this point.
No, I understand that, and that's what we've always done in the past. And basically, you pay to park at the train station. But take Pleasantville, for example, you also have street meters that are used for shopping. Now, I'm not proposing that we implement street meters for parking or have community parking lots. One alternative is to use your extra spaces to have literally a municipal parking lot there that can be used for temporary use. Things like, well, putting in another venue, Chappaqua Crossing, for example. You go to a performance, you could also pay for parking currently.
Well,
John?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to suggest, I mean, this is sort of beyond the current budget question now. I think.
No, I understand, but what I wanted to do is to project for 2022, which is exactly what we're doing. The pandemic's over. We're going to be doing.
I wish it was over.
So I'm just saying for the world of 2022, which is what you're trying to estimate, and how can we optimize the service to our constituents and our townspeople, people that live in the town and the places that are here. How can we encourage people to do this and use our budget to have people go over to Millwood and have them come back?
So, John, I
all right.
think this is probably a larger strategic discussion as to how we can best utilize, our parking lots.
I understand, and how that will affect the budget is where I'm going for this, to do the production. If we do this, then we can do that, then we can collect this. Town of Pleasantville, for example, in their parking meters decides to cover them. And they do that as a holiday gift to the folks that come into that town.
Right, I feel like this might be something, if we were to implement something like that, that would happen, let's say in 2022, that wouldn't impact the budget until 2023. But it's
Well,
definitely
okay, I
something we can
understand.
talk about that.
But I've done a lot of budgeting, for a lot of things, a lot of companies, and this is what I'm putting to. And the other thing that I was just going to mention is one way to cover your revenue problems in terms of refuse is many towns bill the refuse directly to the taxpayers as they do water. So that is just a thought for the future, because obviously it isn't going to affect this particular budget estimate. But remember, this budget estimate was based on the past, and the past for the last 2 years has been greatly affected by factors beyond the control of anything the town could do.
Yeah, and John, we're going to be certainly looking at options for, refuse collection in future years.
Well, I think that's fine. I'm not saying we should do it. I think one of the great advantages to our town over other towns is that we don't charge for it. But that's what we're putting out there, and as you throw the budget together, when you base it on history, the future has a tendency to change on us, and as we know, we're living in a virtual world. So with that, I will put my hand down and thank you for your time.
All right, thanks, John.
Thank you, John. Lisa wants you to come by tomorrow, meet her in the office for a few hours to discuss it. She just told me, as a new supervisor, she looks forward to it. What time, Lisa? 1?
I do. I'll call you, John.
1 to 4.
I'll keep the mute on for you.
She's not covering the meter parking for that one. Thank you,
No, it's
John.
okay. I'm not gonna buy the town. It's fine.
Carrie, anyone else?
All right.
Okay. So, thank you, Rob. That was, I think certainly it's, a lot of towns are going through a lot of issues this year, and you really helped to steer our ship so that, we didn't have some of these issues that other towns did, and thank you. And Jill, too, for really helping us to navigate this and coming up with a great budget that doesn't blow the tax cap. Okay, so I guess for this, do we close the public hearing, leave it open for written comments for a
Written
week?
comment by noon on Friday, and then we'd be prepared to have a resolution on the town board's agenda next week to approve the budget.
Right, okay. So can we get a motion for that?
So moved?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great.
We on to the
Christina,
consent
before
agenda?
we need the budget. That's good. Okay.
All right, anything else before we move to our consent agenda items? Jill?
No, but one of the things that we just should have mentioned is that next week is our last regularly scheduled meeting of 2022. We do have a very limited virtual Zoom meeting for payment of claims on the 21st, I believe.
Right, in the
In
morning.
the morning. I just wanted to confirm with the board what time in the morning would work best for you. Again, virtual, we could do it via Zoom, we know it's payment of claims. There may be one other thing I put on if we can, but I'm hoping to get it on.
I'm not sure if I'm local. I have to ask my wife first. Can we circle back for tomorrow?
I'm available all morning, like I would say,
Well, what's your schedule look like?
until 11:30.
Okay.
Jill, I'm free between 9 and 12.
Perfect, thank you.
I can also be, if we can not do it between 10 and 11, that would be good.
Okay, so not 10 to 11, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then when Leslie gets back to us, we can hold out.
She's a supervisor at my house. I'm one of the deputies.
This is smart, man.
But it's a Zoom, meeting.
Yeah, right, Zoom, so I can do it out there.
Yeah.
I'm not,
Yeah,
You don't need to be
Yeah.
local,
I'm starting to
right?
sweat.
but you do need to like, just be like.
It is actually kind of hot in here.
I'm really starting to sweat.
Yeah,
You
okay.
need to be on the grid.
All right,
All right,
so let's move to our consent
All right,
agenda.
awesome. I move to adopt the consent agenda as submitted, consisting of the following: resolution authorizing settlement of Gulfrac versus Town of Newcastle, authorization to reappoint Howard Dobbs, Board of Assessment Review, authorization to award bid for spring 2022, yep, I read that right, plantings, authorization to release cash bond agreement 22 Deer Creek Lane, authorization to release performance bond 91 Bedford Road, resolution authorizing release of the Roaring Brook Road improvements, performance bond, tree preservation mitigation improvements, performance bond and wetlands, mitigation improvements, performance bond, Chapel Crossing, resolution authorizing a reduction on the retail site improvements, performance bond, Chapel Crossing, resolution authorizing termination of the indemnification insurance agreement, Chapel Crossing, resolution authorizing acceptance of a cash bond agreement, Kingfisher, resolution authorizing acceptance of amendment to and restatement of water easement agreement and agreement releasing and terminating drainage easements, Kingfisher.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move to approve the payment of claims in the amount of $582,184.20 listed on the summary pre-check rating report and detail voucher detail report, both dated December 3rd, 2021. Checks will be cut and mailed to each claimant listed on Wednesday, December 8th, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I move to authorize the purchase of carpet and laminate vinyl tile flooring for the town hall recreation offices and hallway to recreation offices and detective office from Suburban Floors at the cost not to exceed $10,300 as per the quote dated October 29th, 2021.
Okay, so
Second.
this is just a clarification. Remember last week when we were
Yes.
talking about the senior center?
Yes.
It wasn't for the senior center.
Okay.
It was for the hallway, and they're going with gray anyway, but just to let you know.
Thank you.
That was a
Okay.
good question.
It's the back hallway outside the detectives, which is a very internal spot, and it's, yeah.
Okay.
As long as it's gray, I'll approve.
This is great.
Someone second it?
I second the gray.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I move to authorize the hiring of Charles Michael Mitchell to the position of 4th grade police officer within the town of Newcastle Police Department at the annual salary of $73,730, effective January 24th, 2022, or the date Westchester County approves the resignation/reinstatement.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome to town.
I move to authorize the hiring of Linda Lewis for the position of Recreation Attendant 275-05 within the Recreation and Parks Department to serve as a driver for seniors at an hourly rate of $16 per hour, effective December 15th, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome to town.
Okay, here, be it resolved that the Town Board of Newcastle, this one, right?
Yeah,
Hereby approves and ratifies the terms of the settlement agreement between the town and employee number 2419 dated December 7th, 2021, and hereby authorizes the town administrator to execute all documents pertaining to same and take all actions consistent with the terms thereof.
second.
All in favor?
Aye. Okay, and move to adopt the following resolution. Quick question about this for the stretch code. So do I read the summary as well?
Do you want Ed to summarize it?
Not necessarily the summary. At the end, no,
Okay, so then do I read the notice of adoption?
not necessarily.
Okay, all right, I can just go with that, okay. Whereas to prevent a statewide patchwork of stricter energy codes, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA, developed the New York Stretch Energy Code 2020 New York Stretch. And whereas a stretch energy code is simply an energy code that is more stringent than the minimum base energy code that can be voluntarily adopted by local jurisdictions. And whereas New York Stretch is a model stretch code that will be 10 to 12% more efficient than the minimum requirements of the base energy code, the 2020 Energy Conservation Construction Code of New York State. And whereas some New York State municipalities have adopted stricter energy standards to ensure reduced energy costs for its residents and businesses. And whereas under New York Energy Law 11-109, the Town Board of the Town of Newcastle is authorized to adopt a local energy code more stringent than the 2020 ECCC-NYS. And whereas the town will benefit from adoption of the New York Stretch Energy Code 2020, which requires greater efficiency, where greater energy efficiency will be required in the future. And whereas the Town Board wishes to create Chapter 62, Energy Code adopting the New York Stretch Energy Code 2020, as the Town of Newcastle Energy Code is part of the Town of Newcastle Town Code. And whereas the Town of Newcastle desires to sever Section R403.6.2 balanced and HRV-ERV systems mandatory from the New York Stretch Energy Code 2020 because of an apparent conflict with Section M1505.4.1 of the 2020 Residential Code of New York State. And whereas the Town Board wishes to amend the Green Building Code, Chapter 74, Section 13 of the Town of Newcastle Town Code to ensure that the applicable provisions of the Green Building Code do not conflict with the provisions of the New York Stretch Energy Code. And whereas a public hearing was held on November 30th, 2021, at which time all persons interested were provided an opportunity to be heard. And whereas the Town Board hereby determines that adoption of the New York Stretch Energy Code 2020 and amendments of the Town Green Building Code constitutes a Type 2 action for the purposes of environmental review under Article 8 of the Environmental Conservation Law of the State of New York and the regulations promulgated thereunder at 6 NYC-RR 617. Now therefore be it resolved that Town Code of the Town of Newcastle hereby enacts the annexed local law to adopt the New York Stretch Energy Code 2020 and amends the Green Building Code of the Town of Newcastle. Be it further resolved that the Town Clerk of the Town of Newcastle is hereby directed to publish the following notice of adoption. as included in the resolution.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And Jill, with regard to that code, can we ask NYSERDA to provide us a list or something we can get out to residents who are seeking rebates? If they enact this, if they utilize it as to, just to help them?
Yes.
Perfect.
I think we asked about that in the hearing.
We did.
And they kind of punted, we can ask again, but they sort of punted that saying it's the power companies that offer the rebates.
I'll
That
ask
was
Sabrina
the
to make sure.
direction,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but we did ask then, how can this all be aggregated in a way that's easy for our residents to access?
Lori, you want to read the next?
Which one do you want to do next?
You want to do the proclamation declaring national.
But don't use that one, use this one.
There's a different one?
Yes, I think this
I
is,
think this is the updated one, but
Let's-
oh, it is, it's the updated one.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay. That's right, I'll use this. Okay. Whereas the town board of the town of Newcastle believes that the prosperity of our community requires a commitment to human dignity and thereby endeavors to provide quality services and safe public spaces where individual rights are respected. And whereas the town joins the international community to honor International Human Rights Day on December 10th, 2021 in defense of the idea that certain individual rights are beyond the reach of government and thereby the highest law of the land. And whereas the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, recognizing these rights and freedom as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations, and applicable to every individual everywhere, without distinction based on nationality, place of residence, gender, national or ethnic origin, religion, language, or any other status. And whereas despite these internationally recognized terms, the world is still plagued by tragic human rights abuses, including the oppression of women, forced labor, racism, and ethnic and religious persecution. And whereas the 2021 Human Rights Day theme of equality, acknowledging that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, supports rebuilding better, fairer, and greener, supporting a human rights-based economy, equal opportunities for youth, reversing vaccine inequality and injustice, advancing the right to a healthy environment and climate justice, and preventing conflict and building resilience through equality, inclusion, and human rights. And whereas the principles enshrined in the Declaration are of paramount importance to the individual quality of life and call for a community-wide commitment to the belief that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the town board of the town of Newcastle hereby proclaims the 10th day of December 2021 as International Human Rights Day.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Lisa, thank you for preparing that.
My pleasure.
All right, so we have one more? All right, whereas SGP US PFV Chapco Retail LP, otherwise known as SG, the owner of property located at 40 Bedford Road, applied for and obtained various land use approvals between 16 and 2018 from the town of Newcastle, as well as the planning board for the development of a project at Chapel Crossing, including the development of 120,000 square feet of retail, as reflected herein, whereas pursuant to the approvals, SG provided performance bonds to guarantee construction of certain improvements, as reflected herein, whereas the town board accepted the bonds from SG, guaranteed by Aspen American Insurance Company on behalf of SG, including but not limited to those reflected below. Whereas Summit Greenfield has or will shortly enter into a contract for sale for the retail center and has requested that when title is conveyed, the town accept replacement bonds from the purchaser in place of the existing bonds held by the town and any bonds that may be accepted by the town prior to the execution of the contract of sale for the retail center. Now therefore be it resolved that on recognition of SG has or will shortly enter into a contract to sell the retail center, the town board hereby authorizes the town clerk to accept replacement bonds for any bonds currently held by the town, including but not limited to those listed herein, and any bonds that may be accepted by the town prior to the sale of the retail center from the purchaser in the same form and amount to the satisfaction of the town engineer and town attorney, and upon receipt of the replacement bonds and a copy of the recorded deed, the SG performance and maintenance bonds may be released by the town clerk, and no further town board resolution is required.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anything else?
Is that it, Jill?
Okay, did we get everything?
I think that's it.
All right.
Okay,
I move to adjourn.
Second.
all in favor?
All right.
Thanks.
All right.